In a village nestled between rolling green hills and a whispering forest, lived a girl named Elara. She wasn't a princess, nor was she born into wealth. Her days were spent not in a castle, but in her small family bakery, her hands dusted with flour and her heart filled with simple dreams. Her greatest treasure was a pair of leather shoes, lovingly crafted by her late father. They weren't glass slippers, but to Elara, they were more precious than any jewel. They were a reminder of his love, his craftsmanship, and the countless stories he'd told her as he worked the leather. One crisp autumn morning, the village square buzzed with an unusual energy. A royal proclamation had been made. The annual Sunstone Festival would be held in the capital, and everyone, from the highest noble to the humblest baker, was invited. The highlight of the festival was the Grand Ball, an event of legend, where it was said opportunities blossomed and fortunes could change. Elara's heart fluttered. A capital seemed a world away, a place of dazzling lights and grand adventures she'd only read about in borrowed books. Her mother, seeing the longing in her eyes, gave her a small pouch of coins and a warm hug. "Go," she whispered. "Your father would have wanted you to see the world beyond our little village." With her precious shoes on her feet and a heart full of hope, Elara began her journey. The road was long and winding, taking her through golden fields and over sparkling streams. Along the way, she shared her bread with a lost traveler and helped an elderly woman carry her heavy basket of apples. She didn't do it for a reward. It was simply who she was. Kindness was as natural to her as breathing. When she finally saw the towering spires of the capital, she gasped. It was more magnificent than any storybook illustration. The streets were a river of people, dressed in vibrant silks and velvets, their laughter echoing against the grand stone buildings. Elara felt a little small, a little plain in her simple cotton dress. She clutched the small pouch of coins, the reality of her modest means setting in. The grand ball was that very evening, and she had nowhere to stay. As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Elara found herself near the grand marketplace. The air was thick with the scent of spices and roasting chestnuts. Her stomach rumbled, but she knew she had to save her coins. Just then, a commotion erupted. A merchant's cart, overloaded with bolts of shimmering fabric, had overturned, spilling its precious cargo onto the muddy street. People gasped and pointed, but no one moved to help the frantic merchant. Without a second thought, Elara rushed forward. She carefully gathered the silks, lifting them from the grime, her own dress getting stained in the process. She helped the grateful merchant right his car and stack his goods. He looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Young lady," he said, his voice warm, "you have a kind heart. That is rarer than any silk I sell." As a thank you, he gifted her a bolt of deep blue velvet, the color of a twilight sky. Holding the velvet, Elara felt a renewed sense of hope. But where could she possibly turn this fabric into a gown? As if in answer to her thoughts, she noticed a small, dimly lit tailor shop tucked away in a quiet alley. Inside, an old tailor with kind, wrinkled eyes sat hunched over his work. He listened to her story, his gaze softening as she spoke of her journey and her dreams. He looked at the beautiful velvet and then at Elara's earnest face. "Kindness is a currency of its own," he said softly. "I will help you." He worked with a speed and skill that was mesmerizing. In what felt like mere moments, he had transformed the bolt of velvet into a simple but elegant gown that fit her perfectly. He refused her coins, simply patting her hand and wishing her a wonderful evening. Dressed in her new gown, Elara felt a quiet confidence bloom within her. She made her way to the royal palace, a colossal structure of white marble that seemed to touch the stars. The ballroom was a breathtaking sea of light and music. Chandeliers dripped with crystals, and lords and ladies waltzed across the polished floor. Alara felt a pang of shyness, staying near the edge of the grand room. She wasn't looking for a prince. She was just soaking in the magic of it all. The night was a whirlwind of music and wonder. She danced with a friendly guard, shared a laugh with a lady in waiting, and simply enjoyed the spectacle. As the hour grew late, she knew she had to begin her long journey home before dawn. She hurried out of the palace and into the cool night air. The city was quiet now, asleep under a blanket of stars. As she crossed a cobblestone bridge over a moonlit canal, a loose stone caught the heel of her shoe, one of her precious, father-made shoes. She stumbled, and with a soft plop, the shoe slipped from her foot and disappeared into the dark water below. A wave of despair washed over her. Tears welled in her eyes. It was more than just a shoe. It was her last tangible connection to her father. She sat on the edge of the bridge, her heart aching with the loss, the magic of the evening completely shattered. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the prince. He had left the stifling ballroom seeking a moment of peace, and had witnessed the whole thing. He wasn't wearing his crown or formal attire, and in the dim light, he looked just like any other young man. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice full of genuine concern. Alara, through her tears, explained what the shoe meant to her. She didn't speak of its monetary value, but of its sentimental worth, of her father, his love, his stories. The prince listened, truly listened, not as a royal, but as a person. He was moved by her sincerity and her deep, genuine emotion, a stark contrast to the superficial pleasantries of the court. He saw past her simple clothes and saw the richness of her character. He offered to help her look, and for the next hour, they searched along the canal bank under the moonlight. They didn't find the shoe, but they found something else, a connection. They talked about everything and nothing about her bakery and his duties, about her love for stories and his longing for a life with more meaning. For the first time, the prince felt seen not for his title, but for who he was. And Alara, for her part, spoke not to a prince, but to a kind and understanding soul. As dawn approached, the prince made her a promise. "I cannot replace what you've lost," he said, his eyes sincere, "but I would be honored if you would allow me to get to know the remarkable woman who wore it." The next day, a royal carriage arrived in Alara's village. It wasn't carrying a proclamation to find the owner of a lost shoe. It carried the prince himself. He hadn't come to find a bride based on a shoe size. He had come to see Alara. He visited her family's bakery, his hands getting dusted with flour as she taught him how to knead dough. He listened to her mother's stories and saw the love that filled their humble home. The villagers watched in awe as the prince and the baker's daughter walked through the fields, their conversation easy and their laughter genuine. Their connection wasn't born from a magical fitting or a royal decree. It was built on shared moments, mutual respect, and a deep, authentic understanding of one another. Alara never found her lost shoe, but in losing it, she found something far greater. She found a path she never knew existed. She didn't become a princess who simply lived in a castle. She became a partner, a counselor, and a force for good. She brought her warmth and practical wisdom to the royal court, reminding everyone that true nobility lies not in one's birth, but in one's actions. Together, she and the prince built a future based on kindness, understanding, and a love that was as real and sturdy as the handcrafted leather of a lost shoe. Her destiny wasn't to be found by a prince, but to be built, side by side, with a person who saw her for exactly who she was. And that was the greatest magic of all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little reminder that our true destiny is the one we create ourselves.